Hey y'all, this is Tamika, the face behind Hey HR. This is a space for employees, employers, and job seekers. Listen, if you feel like, hey, I got a charge, so I can't apply for any job at all, then you definitely want to stay tuned for this video all about background screenings. I'm probably going to do more of like a series on background screening, so definitely stay tuned for future videos. So I'm just going to address the big question that people are always worried about. They think, well, I got a charge, Tamika, so I can't work. That's not true. You just have limited selections. I wouldn't even say limited. They're less than the average because you have issues, right? So there's some things that you got to work around, but you can definitely still work. You can work with a great employer. The first thing I want you to know is that you just simply have to be honest. Don't think like if they ask you about any convictions or anything on your application that you should tell them anything different. So what you're going to do is you're going to disclose convictions. You're not required to disclose arrests at all. I mean, we all are seeing the day and times that we live on where some arrests just, are they really just? We don't know. And that's not the employer's assumption to make. That's the law assumption to find out and figure out the facts for. So when you're just looking for a job, you're only exposing convictions, things where you've went through the process and you have actually been convicted of a crime. If it's simply an arrest, you don't have to post that. But I will say be prepared to talk about, be transparent about, give details on any open charges. Because if you're still waiting to see if you're going to be convicted or you're still fighting for your innocence in this charge, then it will possibly come up on your background screenings. Most time it will. If you have a good background screening firm, it should. And whenever an open conviction comes up, that gives the employer the right to ask you. Most times they're going to send it in a letter or an email to say, hey, can you give us details on this charge? Sometimes they want that just as backup to say, okay, we're okay with hiring this person and this is why. Sometimes they're looking at that as, okay, this is going to help us make our decision on if we should proceed with this person or not. So just be prepared that you're going to have to be honest. You're going to have to show any convictions that you have. You don't have to show arrest, but you have to be prepared to talk about it. So now the next topic that I want to talk about is like your defense. So we were to talk about you being honest. Now I'm going to talk about your defense in this situation. And so the first thing I want you to do is pull your own records. Go to your county office, check your state reports, check your city reports, and pull whatever records come up in your name so that you have documents in your hand. First, you want to verify that that documentation is correct. Secondly, you want to have that to present whenever someone asks you a question about a charge that you may have. Because there are times when background screenings can pull incorrect or outdated info. There is only the county that's required to keep that information updated, and they're not required to keep it updated online. They're only required to do it in their office. So if you pulled something from online, maybe the office is showing that this is a dismissed charge, but online is showing that it's an open charge. So you want to definitely go to these offices and ask them to pull these records. And to be honest with you, for all of my employers who are watching this, you should have a background screening firm that's definitely doing county checks. If they're only doing online information and they're getting back this instant data, we can get it back to you within 2 hours, you don't want that information. Just tossing that out there. Don't get overwhelmed if a background screening is taking a while to come back with the information. In most instances, as long as it's like 2 or 3 days, that's okay. Don't be alarmed if it's taking like 2 or 3 days. Now when it takes 2 or 3 weeks, then I'll find some area for concern as you the applicant and as you the employer. So then you're knowing that either something's going on that they're trying to verify, or maybe they've sent out an adverse action request to the potential employee. Now the only thing I will say is that COVID has put some strain on these county offices. So many of them have been closed for extensive periods of time. So right now during COVID time, I would say definitely don't be alarmed. But when COVID times are over, I want you to look at 2 or 3 days to get your results back, sometimes a week, and then if it starts being over 2 or 3 weeks to get your results back, be concerned. And just keep in mind that as an applicant, you can apply to any job you want. What you want to do is make sure that if you're like charged with some type of theft or some type of burglary or something, I wouldn't suggest, and it's not going to work out anyhow, for you to go and apply to a bank to be a banker or whatever. That's not going to work. I mean, if it does, it's only because you're out of that 7 or 10 years after you've satisfied the conviction. So let's say, for an example, you had a burglary charge, you served 10 years. After you already served those 10 years, you still have to wait another 7 to 10 years before someone takes the time to even consider you working in their establishment with a charge that's related related to what they do in everyday business. So don't say, oh my God, I can't work anywhere. No, if you're gonna work, let's say at a service station, you might can't work at the register, but you can definitely work in cleaning. You can definitely work in the bakery part. You can definitely work in the food prep part. Like, you just can't work at the register. Now, I definitely want you as an applicant to definitely take a look and say, I'm gonna look at the question they asked me in this conviction on this employment application. People ask it all types of ways. There's not a formal way to ask it, so people ask in various ways, and honestly, depending on the state, they have to ask in a particular way. But you want to favor those job applications that have ban the box, where you're not worried about that checking that box, or that question is more geared at, do you have any convictions? Not if you have any arrests or whatever, if you have any convictions. And you definitely want to favor the ones that say within this period of time, and on average it should be roughly 7 to 10 years, because I want you to know that 7 to 10 years sounds like a long time, but what an employer wants to look for is this habitual behavior? If it's habitual, you're going to do it again. So if you're already satisfied like time for having 3 different DUIs, then you're like, no, I'm a recovered alcoholic and I'm never going to drink and drive again. I mean, you can only see that over time. So it's going to take some time to make sure that you don't have any additional charges showing that. So don't feel like, oh my God, the world is against me. It's not. You just have yourself in a position where you're a little delayed, but you can still make it through. For employers, I'm going to tell you the same thing. Don't think that because somebody had a charge 20 years ago, oh, I can't hire them. Why not? They did it one time 20 years ago. I mean, I thought that we know that sometimes people redeem themselves. I thought we know that there are resources out there. Let's not hold somebody against getting a job from 20 years ago. And I had worked one place where there was a charge that was like 15 years ago, and it didn't even relate to the job that they were doing. And I was like, why are we not giving them this job? This happened 15 years ago. We shouldn't have been looking at anything past 10. And now we're saying hold off. Well, you kind of put yourself in the arms of litigation. Just tossing it out there. So now I just want to give like an overview of this whole thing. The first thing that you want to do is pull all of your information, any records that you may have, even possible like school transcripts to show like maybe you were in school during that time, military documents, what have you, that supports where you were and how active you were in your life at that time, as well as the actual charges from that county office. Have that with you, and I want you to offer it. Whenever you get an adverse action email or an adverse action letter in the mail, an adverse action just means, hey, we found this charge, can you explain, type of thing. And you have 5 days, I believe. You have a certain period of time to respond, and if you don't respond, then they'll automatically reject you just because you didn't respond to the adverse action, but not because of the charge. If you ever get to that point, I want you to offer this information. Don't wait for them to ask for it. When they send you that letter, you do your response, or they send you that email, you do your response. To that email or that letter, attach whatever supporting documents you have. Don't make folks ask, because you offering that is showing that you're giving total transparency, and that alone probably can make them say, oh, we're going to go ahead and hire this person anyhow. Be transparent. The next thing I want you to know in this overview is don't be alarmed like, oh my God, I don't even want the job again because everybody already know I got a conviction. Like, why do I want to work there? Everybody thinks I'm a criminal. That's not true. This information is limited to HR. In most instances, the hiring manager isn't even aware. Now, I want to make it clear that sometimes HR doesn't make these decisions totally on themselves. So they may include the hiring manager on that decision and tell them their options, or HR may go ahead and inform those who are like above them, like whoever they report. So if HR reports to the CEO or HR reports to the VP of whatever, then what HR will do is make that person aware of the decision that they're making, because that's a potential liability, and so they want to make sure that they're covering their butts for the most part. Beyond that person and HR knowing, your hiring manager doesn't have to know, and if your hiring manager knows, then they're bound to confidentiality. So don't feel like you're coming into a place where all of your coworkers know. And let me just toss this out there for y'all. When y'all get hired and y'all got charges and folks wiggle you through and hire you anyhow, don't go on the job telling everybody all about your situation. Just stop that. First of all, it's office gossip. Second of all, why they need to know? They strangers to you. Third of all, like, you proud of this? Chill. Don't tell nobody your business, because folks have a bad habit of saying, oh yeah, I had a charge, and man, they could have not given me a job. I really liked them because they gave me a job. Don't do that. Stop. And the last thing in this overview section that I want to make sure that you guys are aware is avoid habitual behavior. If you have one charge of domestic violence, you have one charge DUI, or you have one charge of burglary, or you have one charge of misconduct, if you have any, like one single charge, don't do it again. You can always get rejected off of a job for habitual behavior, which leads me into finances. Folks get alarmed, and I saw something I read in this book actually, because that's my book of the month. But in that book, I read that she was saying that job employers will check your credit score, but they're not supposed to. The credit score isn't even supposed. I've never seen a credit score reported to me when I did a finance check or credit check or background screening. I don't want the score. What I want to look for is habitual behaviors. If you have, an incident that happened one time, do not repeat that incident. I'm going to be honest with you. Folks should care less about your credit score and more about on the credit part. Now, let's leave away from the bad activity and let's talk about credit checks. What folks want to look for in credit checks is, one, they want to see if they can trust you with a company credit card. Two, they want to see if they can trust you with advancing any money to you at all. And three, they want to see if you have been running your personal life in a way that works well for you as a business professional if you're working like in a finance department or related to finance department. When they're checking your credit check, they get that whole report. They're looking like, did this all happen within one period of time because this person was going through a divorce? Or did this all happen sporadically over time? Can they explain this? Did they go through a divorce? Did they then lose their house? Did they have a custody issue with the kids? And they should be able to show that, listen, these are my divorce papers and this happened during this time and this is why all of these events triggered. We also may be looking to see what type of bills is this person not paying and how long are they not paying them. So you don't want to have a cable bill that go to your credit report if you're working in finances. You don't want to have a luxury pool or a car that goes to your credit report, because that's showing that you're spending money frivolously and you're not being responsible, and that's showing habitual behavior because you've avoided it for years. Oh man, this is my favorite part, y'all. We get to the tip. And I know, like I said in the last video, I know y'all stick around just for the tips.
Tips are good.
So I want you to know these tips that are important for you. The first thing, if you're an employer and you're looking for a background screening firm, definitely reach out to me. You can comment below. Feel free to send me an email. I will definitely navigate that with you and walk you through each step of the process and help you with any questions that you may have or connect you with the right person. The next thing, if you're an applicant, I want you to know that you're not barred from every single job just because you have a charge, a conviction, or an arrest. You're not barred from working, so definitely keep plunging away. Now, I didn't really get into this, but this video is probably the first of a series because there's so much to talk about with background screenings. But be careful with your social media posts because that comes along with background screenings as well. Not all the time, but it's definitely open. Once you sign that disclaimer and you say, hey, this is a consumer authorization form that's authorizing you guys to check whatever, then you obviously give that employer an opportunity to check your social media. So be careful of that. With social media, you want to make sure that you're not putting like profane or abusive, neglectful information there. There are quite a few things you want to be careful of.
I know you're like, oh, it's freedom of speech. It's
yeah, but sometimes your opinion matters on how you're going to operate in everyday business, which means how you're going to work on the job. Be careful with that. And this is my last tip. It probably should have been my first tip. Behave. If you got in trouble one time, you already satisfied that, learn from that lesson. Don't do it again. Do you know that there are some people that live their entire life with no charges, no convictions, and no arrest? You can do it. Behave. You're an adult. Are you becoming an adult? Just no more charges, okay? I thank you all for watching, and I thank you so much for coming to my channel. If you found any bit of this interesting, please definitely give me a thumbs up. And please, if you definitely found it interesting, you want to see my upcoming videos about more background screenings, more HR certification tips, more HR hiring, terminating, benefits info, then definitely consider subscribing.